What are some of the things that independent filmmakers skip over, thinking, oh, I don't need to spend a lot of money on that, but actually that's dangerous for them to do that?
You know, I always say there's 5 things that really make a film look low or no budget. And it's cinematography, it's the sound, it's the actors you choose, it's the editing, and it's the locations. And if you can step up in those 5 arenas and get the best that you can, and then really try to get better, you're gonna have a project that is just a step above. You know, I spent a lot of years judging different film festivals, obviously the workshops and things that I do with different schools, so I see it all. And when you start a film and it's shot just so bad, and there's no thought to framing or composition or anything, it's just you're done. And the sound, bad sound is so easy to get. And it's one of those things that I watch more people chintz on and getting a good sound recording on the set. Everybody likes to use their friends and lovers in their movies. Chances are your friends and lovers are not good actors. There are so many film schools. There are so many acting classes that you can call and say, I'm doing a student project, I'm doing a spec film. I want actors that are good and know their craft. And you know what? They will sign up to do it because they need tape. You ask your girlfriend or your friends either because you're afraid to ask real talent and they may not like your work or want to do it, and that's where you're wrong. Or B, because you're afraid your girlfriend will leave you if you don't put her in your movie. And that's, you know, I read about that in the book. It's a kiss of death. I mean, if your girlfriend's a good actor, give her a role. But I would be very careful in casting. And editorial is important. You know, editing is everything. I spent many years in the edit bay before I considered myself a filmmaker, and I learned what not to do in the edit bay. And it makes me sad when people I think about as writing or their cinematography reel, or, you know, the end result without thinking about the most important result in the filmmaking process, which is really the editorial and also the cinematography. I think they work very much hand in hand. Locations are key because anybody can shoot in their house, anybody can shoot in their kitchen, anybody can shoot in their car. Our job as storytellers is to take people places where they can't go, where they wish to go, or where they're afraid to go. And if you give them locations that are just, you know, interesting and break the monotony of every other low-budget film, I think you'd be surprised how much more success you can have with your film. You know, I had a wonderful drama teacher, and I always quote him, Mr. Kilpatrick from high school, and his favorite saying was, come up with 3 ways to do something and go with the 4th. And I wish I remember that more often. I'd probably have better movies that were more successful if I did. But especially young filmmakers, you know, hey, I can shoot this at my house. Okay, scrap that. There's one idea. You're not doing it. I can shoot it in my garage. Okay, that's even worse. It's still at the house, but no, you're not going to do it. When you shoot it in a car, why? You know, I'm all for keeping dialogue scenes moving, so putting them in a car is a good way to do that. But where can you do this that's different, that's just going to make the viewer feel like they're watching something fresh? And I think locations are key. The most important thing is, you know, where people put money where they shouldn't is, it seems to be the wrap parties. I'm a big anti-wrap party guy. It's just money that's never going on the screen. It's money that you're more interested in the social media aspect of people cooing over your wrap party. And I think it's important to have a gathering of the people that have worked hard for the film, but do it smart. It's like when we do a film, we try to schedule our biggest cast days on the last day and something centrally located so people who aren't involved in the last day can come visit the last day. And we'll spend a little extra money on the catering. We may go and buy 10 bottles of champagne for the day, not expensive ones, and put a simple day for the last day so we can end early, no stress, and then party right there. We don't need to go rent out bowling alleys. We don't need to go rent out, you know, all these places. It's just money that doesn't go on the screen. And when you're making especially independent films, every dime counts. Why are you gonna blow it in one night? That's never gonna go on the screen. Think about it. I know people that have spent 25 grand on a film and they'll spend 5 grand on a wrap party. And I'll watch the film and say, why didn't you get a real editor? We couldn't afford one, really. You know, you could have gotten so-and-so for 3 grand to do that. Look at so-and-so's resume. Oh, they've cut 15 studio films that went #1. They've cut 18 sitcoms that are like top tier sitcoms that on their off time will happily moonlight and gladly get involved and get their hands dirty for fun for a little money. And that's always the excuse. Well, we couldn't afford it, but it's always something else that they can afford that just doesn't matter. And I think they just have to reprioritize. Sadly, I think social media has become the driving force behind what people do. I know when I'm shooting a movie, 18 months later when the movie comes out, nobody's going to care about our set picture. Like, people want to post on Instagram and Facebook, hey, we're on set, look at us. Great. It's not going to sell one ticket. It's not going to sell one DVD. It's not going to get one download. It's about how you build up to the end and its release. And there's something that you don't want to give is, you don't want to give people overexposure. You don't want to make people punch drunk on your pictures of the same with no results or no output. So we try to be very careful when we promote our films and not do it for years of social media hype and likes. It doesn't sell any movies. It's not going to work.
I want to go back to something that you said that was really interesting. You said you wrote about it in your book, and that is using a girlfriend. You could also fill in boyfriend, family member, coworker,
cousin,
right, whoever. How do you have that conversation with that person? Because you want to keep the relationship with the person, or maybe you don't, but let's suppose you do want to keep the relationship. How do you say, listen, do you audition them the way everyone else does?
I think it's a lose-lose. I say if you're a young filmmaker, don't date an actor. I'm married to an actor, and we have a great relationship. She did 4 years on General Hospital. She's been in a lot of fun movies, and there's never, it's like for me, I always try to put my wife in and just have her there to be involved. But she produces with me. She's involved in the post-production. We work on a film together for 8 to 12 months. Having her be a part of it on camera is something I like to let her flex that muscle and have fun, and she's good. She knows her craft. She's good at what she does. But she doesn't have expectations for me either. She understands it's a business. I don't like having her in front of the camera as a director. I am not as gracious with her as I probably could be. I could be better as a husband to a wife who's acting. And that's just probably my fault. It's just, it's not a dynamic that I love, but we found a way to make it work. And she's been in every film I've done over the last 15, 20 years, and it's worked. But to get back to your question, I think you have to decide, are you in this to showcase a whole bunch of friends, or are you here to make a career? And if you're going to become a doctor, you're going to become an architect, if you're going to become a lawyer, are you going to spend all those years in college and bring your friends along with you while you're studying, taking your tests, and learning the craft of medicine? I don't think so. So I think filmmaking communities are important, and yes, relationships build. You're going to meet women in film school or actors on the set that you're going to fall in love with. But I think you really have to think above the shoulders and think, what is the purpose of this project, and what do I hope to gain out of it? And selfishly, you have to build what's best for the project. There's nothing harder than when you've got somebody you love who's in front of the camera that is just atrocious and they just sink the ship. What I always try to do coming up is I would find ways to utilize people's gifts in ways that wouldn't sink the ship. I always say to somebody, well, you want to work in the industry anyway. If you weren't going to act, what else would you want to do? Well, why don't you produce this with me? I need somebody to handle SAG paperwork. I need somebody to handle our locations. And then, you know what? Throw them an under 5. Throw them something expendable where if God forbid it's awful, get rid of it. And I'm sorry to talk so straight. The only way to get rid of a problem is to not have a problem, or to be able to get yourself out of a problem. And if you're starring your girlfriend who can't remember a line or hit a mark or understand the craft of respect the craft of acting enough to know it, why are you wasting your time? It just doesn't make sense. So I don't have much grace, or I'm not very soft-hearted when it comes to that. I say just don't even go there.
Yeah, I think it's not just girlfriends, though. I think if there's friendships that are built around, people
whatever it is,
being in films together, and that's great. And I think it could just be a really difficult thing for people to handle.
Yeah, Ed Burns was very lucky with Brothers McMullen. He had some very talented friends.
True. Very
but,
true.
that happens once in a while. Shane Black, he grew up at that, coming off Overland in West LA, and he kind of lived in that famous house with writers and actors and storytellers, and these guys all kind of helped each other out and built the machine. It's very rare. The Wilson brothers, Owen and the other one, God, I'm blanking. Luke, yeah, talented, and they ran, did Bottle Rockets and all their friends. And there's ways to do it. Napoleon Dynamite did it too. But by and large, you think about how many young filmmakers are out there, and we always go for, hey, mom, do you want to play the mom in my short? When you were Steven Spielberg in Seven, that worked. But when you're in film school, you're trying to make a career for yourself. Again, call the acting schools. There are a lot of acting schools that have some decent, talented people that would sure love to be a part of your film, and they will take it seriously, and they will learn the role, and the craft is there, and the talent is there. And Uncle Vinny playing dad is not always the best idea. Now look, I'll often use an owner of a location if I know they're a SAG actor and they're good. Like I have friends that own locations that are actually working good actors. I'll say, hey, I'll trade you off. I want your location, but I'll give you a few lines in this movie. Like, oh yeah, sign me up. But they're working actors also, So I think you always have to try to put the right people in when you can.
With the exception of with locals in certain films, especially if it's like a certain region of the U.S. or other part of the world, there's just people that you can't get that from central casting. It's too good, and you can definitely tell, but it works in the film, So
we were talking about getting some people that you just find, just the gems. Oh, it's casting it's interesting. I say, as filmmakers, you want to make friends with a lot of different agencies. To this day, I will reach out to friends that own boutique agencies you've never heard of and say, I'm doing a film, I need a cashier at a country store. I need a hipster who can play guitar at a campfire. I need somebody who can, be a drug dealer on the corner. Or I'll call a drug dealer on the corner and say, hey, you want to play yourself in a movie? I'll give you $50. Sometimes you got to do that. I find the people that are the best to get are the people that do what it is you want them to do. If you're not hiring an actor, again, to me, it's always about getting the best person you can in front of and behind the camera. So if you need something and you're not getting it with what you're auditioning, go find somebody who does it and tell them, I just need you to be yourself. I want you to be a part of this. I'm not going to embarrass you. I need, and you'd be amazed. I learned that from my dad. We worked with probated youth for a lot of years. And we had a lot of kids in our life that we knew that had done a lot of crooked stuff. And I remember one time we got a pilot for, I think it was Time Warner Television or Warner Cable, Court TV, something like that. And they wanted a bunch of reenactments of burglaries and assaults and all that. And at the end of the day, we ended up, I think, hiring 8 or 9 of the kids that we worked with that had done time in real prison to play parts, and they did better than anybody. They knocked it out of the park because it's who they were. And look at Homeboy's Industry, Inc.
Is that Father Boyle?
Yeah, you got Father Boyle at Homeboy Industries. I first learned about them when we were shooting Gridiron Gang. Half the extras you walk around, you go, you just know when you've worked around real inmates most of your life, like I have, the swagger, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they move. And I remember saying at one point, I said, where'd we get all these guys? Because I know they've done time. I said, oh, this great thing going on called Homeboy Industries, Inc. You got to check it out. All these kids have done time. And I was like, that makes sense. That's so cool. And so I'm a big fan of that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, there's nothing worse when someone is supposed to play someone in the underworld, let's say, and they're so squeaky clean and it just takes you out. And there's mannerisms, there's just different signs. And
yeah. Watch a lot of music videos from the 80s. Because they would put a lot of the rock stars' girlfriends in when they were supposed to be down and out homeless girls, and you'd see these not Tawny Katane on the Jaguar hood, but you would see supermodels literally with shoe polish on their face, digging through a bin looking for food, and you're like, oh, come on, man. Yeah,